Well, the Rockies have lost 7 games in a row, and all of them pretty much thanks to their pitching staff. What can be done about the Colorado Rockies pitchers and their pitching situation at Mile High? We'll talk about that coming up next on the DNVR Rockies podcast. To say it's a happy Monday here on the DNVR Rockies podcast. It's a little less than happy because the topic of choice today is the state of our rotation, the state of the Colorado Rockies pitching, which has been abysmal to say the least. Welcome into the DNVR Rockies podcast presented by Bet365. Download the Bet365 app, use code DNVR365. Place a bet for $5. You can get $150 back in bonus bets. And welcome into the show, everyone. Christian Saez, Big Fly Spence hanging out with us from the Casa. Spence, what's up, man? I missed a couple games this week because I was celebrating my anniversary with my wife in the mountains. Did I miss much? I didn't see anything crazy happening.
Well, it's not crazy if you're a Rockies fan what's happened the last 7 games, but it's just normal. Starting pitcher goes 2 to 3 to 4 innings, gives up 6, 7 plus runs. They actually get a lot of hits, as you saw from, if you check the box score yesterday, you're like, wow, Rockies had a great game. And in fact, they were out hitting the Diamondbacks. I think I tweeted this in the 7th inning. They were out hitting the Diamondbacks in the 6th or 7th inning, and they were down by 6 runs. It was 12-6, and they were out hitting them. So a lot of the worthless hits coming back. But really, I mean, if you're a Rockies fan and the last 2 weeks in general, you just know what's happening. So it's not really that shocking. But if you're a fan of another team and you're coming to play the Rockies right now, it doesn't matter if you got a bunch of hitters that are hitting in the 180s, you're absolutely going to demolish the ball against these starters and relievers.
It's brutal, man. It's carnage out there on the field. Rockies have lost 7 games in a row. Now, remember, the Rockies have never lost more than 8 games in a row, so we do have some light coming at the end of the tunnel here if the trends stay the same. But the Rockies got swept in the 3 games during a weekend series in Arizona. They have been swept 14 times this year. That is tied for the second most in franchise history with the inaugural 1993 team. The 2023 team was also swept 15 times. There's a lot of baseball left to be played. I would imagine they break that record among others. The Rockies are 30-87 right now. They are on pace for 120 losses. Remember, the record is 121. So if they lose today against the Cardinals, they will officially be back on pace for that 121 losses. But pitching, man, pitching has just been awful. The Rockies, since the All-Star break, which, if you remember, has actually, at least from a record standpoint, hasn't been as bad as the beginning of the year. The Rockies were kind of sitting around 500 post All-Star break for a while there. But pitching has been to blame for the recent skids over the last couple weeks. Rockies starters since the All-Star break are posting an 8.69 ERA. Relievers aren't doing much better. They're at an 8.26 ERA. But the first inning has felt like the biggest roadblock in this entire season. I mean, we've had ups and downs all year long. It felt like the offense was the worst offense we'd ever seen in the history of baseball at the beginning of the year. Now the offense has kind of come back and found their swing a little bit. But I mean, it feels like it's almost a guaranteed bet that the Rockies will give up at least 1 run in the first inning. And that has continued to cash out pretty much every single night.
Yeah, and you can bet that on the Bet365 app. So I would think it's 7 games in a row now that they've either given up a run or scored a run. A few of the games in the Blue Jays series, they got through the top of the first, were fine, and then they scored a run in the bottom of the first. So that's almost a guaranteed bet in any Rockies game right now. And the real ironic part about how they're playing in this moment, in this last 2-ish weeks, is this is kind of what we expected to see from the Rockies this entire year, in my opinion. I didn't expect them to be good. I didn't expect them to be as bad as they have been, obviously, all season long. But this last 2 weeks is really what I would have guessed a Rockies game looks like. score a lot of runs, have a lot of hits. You would imagine that these guys would be good on the offensive side of the ball. And then you're also going to allow a lot of runs. And honestly, they're not scoring enough to win any of these games, but the offense has done a complete 180 since the first couple months of the season. So that's fun to see. But now, being one of the worst teams in the history of baseball, obviously, if something starts to go right in your favor, then something else has to go completely wrong in your favor. And I don't know. I'd have to look at numbers, and I'm sure over the hundreds of years of baseball, we as Rockies fans, we've dove into a lot of the 1800 stats to find the sense when did the Rockies do this or that. But there's got to be very few less instances of a 10 to 15 game stretch where the starting pitching every single night. We talked about it last pod. There's no stopgap. There's no stopper. Every single night they're giving up multiple first inning runs, and the starter leaves after 4 or 5 innings, giving up already 5 to 6 at least runs per game. And I just can't imagine that other teams have. If this has ever happened in the MLB, maybe a few bad runs from teams here or there, but this is kind of just what we are now. I mean, the other team's over and the run in the first inning is just the easiest money in the world.
Yeah, and this has always been something that the Rockies have struggled with, not to this level, but this pitching does not go hand in hand with Coors Field and with the Colorado Rockies. We know the stigma against the Colorado Rockies and how they struggle to not just have and keep successful pitching in Colorado, but also to attract good pitchers in free agency trades, whatever that looks like. So pitching has never been something that's gone right for the Colorado Rockies. You've gotten lucky a couple times, and luck, maybe is a little bit of a generous word. You've had a couple good guys develop through the system. You've gotten a couple good deals. We saw Ubaldo Jimenez come back to Coors Field to pitch for the Savannah Bananas for an inning. He was a solid pitcher when he was in his prime with the Colorado Rockies. And Spencer, you and I, we did the all quarter century team or lineup for the Colorado Rockies. I think it was like a month or two ago, and a lot of people were arguing that the pitchers, the all quarter century pitchers for the Colorado Rockies, couldn't compare to any of the other, top teams' pitchers, and that would have been the biggest thing that the Rockies struggle with. But if you remember, Kyle Freeland in his prime was a Cy Young candidate. German Marquez in his prime. If you're looking specifically at primes, like, we have had good pitchers in Colorado. It's been the longevity of those pitchers. It's been keeping them in their prime. It's been all of those things associated around those pitchers that has been the trouble. And I feel like we're coming to this point, this funnel, where all of these pitchers that used to be good, German, Kyle Freeland, even Antonio Senzatella, are all basically just falling off the face of the earth, pretty much all at the same time. And it's just unfortunate because the Rockies aren't in a position where they have tons of guys who are ready to get called back up and make, a big debut or kind of fill those gaps. We're going to see Chase Dollander getting called back up today to start. But the pitching situation feels pretty bleak, and I want to keep talking about this. But it does, at least for the time being, feel like there's no solution here in Colorado for pitching.
Yeah, well, and your tweet today was like a perfect summation of where the Rockies pitching is at, or maybe it was yesterday now, that they're calling Chase Dollander up and he's going to start tonight. And they legitimately, it can't be worse than what we are rolling out there every single game. We had, I think you have to go all the way back to probably the Guardians series. Even though they won the Pirates series, their pitching was god-awful. We witnessed one of the most insane comebacks of all time, that Friday night rooftop club. But you have to go back to the Guardians series to even get a decent start. And I think the most frustrating thing is right now where the Rockies are at, we don't expect a guy to go 7 or 8 innings and allow 0 runs. Like, that's not in our realm. This is on a Rockies curve here. If a guy goes 5 innings and gives up 3 or 4 or less, I think that's right in the ballpark of like, hey, we got a shot to win this game. And you alluded to it. A lot of these guys have been borderline elite pitchers at one point in their career, but every single one of them has fallen not even off the face of the earth. I mean, it's outside of the universe of just performance has dropped like insane.
Yeah.
And it's almost like the momentum of each other. They just cannot, nobody can stop it. Nobody can go out there and have a decent outing. And we saw like a few glimpses of it. I think there was 1 or 2 guys that got through 3 or 4 innings in the Blue Jays series, giving up 3 or 4 runs. Blue Jays, great team, great offense. But then the fifth or sixth rolls around, and then it's a crooked inning. And it was just like yesterday against the Diamondbacks. They're cooking along. I mean, yeah, they allowed 3 in the first, of course, with 2 outs, and then a couple more with 2 outs. Like, just allowing runs with 2 outs seems like a guaranteed thing at this point. And then you get to, I believe, either 6th or 7th, and they put up an 8 spot, and you're completely out of the game. When it's 4-3 in the 3rd or 4th, you're like, yeah, get a few clutch hits. I mean, the Rockies had 17 hits yesterday, so it's not like they weren't hitting the ball, but they're just giving you no chance to win straight off the bat. And it just kind of brings the whole vibe of the game down. Like, I still get excited for every single game. Like, I'm juiced up to watch them play tonight against the Cardinals because I'm a sicko. But I know that multiple first inning runs or first few inning runs are coming, and there's nothing we can do about it.
I mean, there's still hope that I have that Chase Dollander, I mean, he's got the stuff to play at any position, or any stadium, I should say, Coors Field or beyond. He's got elite stuff. That's never been a question. It's whether or not he can fine tune that stuff to kind of get to the point where you see other guys who have similar stuff to him. Paul Skeens being one of them, a young pitcher who throws upper 90s on his fastball, got good breaking ball action. But Paul Skeens' location and the ability to command his pitches is unlike anyone else I've seen in baseball. And so if you can get a version of that in Chase Dollander, you start to feel like, hey, we're going to get some good starts out of Chase Dollander. So I'm hopeful that Chase has, even if he didn't get the work that he needed in the minors, again, I mean, his ERA is tough to look at in his couple games that he pitched in Albuquerque, but I also understand that paints a very specific picture that's hard to quantify. I know the minors, everything's kind of graded differently, and it's hard. It's different pitching in the minors as it is pitching in the big leagues, and I understand all of the dynamics there. But if nothing else, I'm hoping that Chase kind of gets this opportunity to kind of clear his mind of some of the struggles he had before he went back down to Albuquerque, and could come back ready to go and just kind of be a different version of himself. So I'm hopeful that Chase is in a good spot. He's got good stuff, but it's tough to feel like there's any hope beyond just a good comeback from Chase Dollander. And I see Big Sexy in the chat said Freeland had 1 season over 500 in his 9 season. At what point do we start having the conversation about him? He's been rough for years now. Freeland's interesting because Freeland definitely, I think, again, outside of his prime, which was that 1 season, has had some ups and downs, but Freeland's one of those guys that just battles for you. And so I think, Rockies ownership, management, and even the fans look at Kyle Freeland, and I will even say we have done this plenty of times this year, and you see, hey, he gives up 4 runs in the first inning, and you're feeling all down on yourself, and then he goes up and puts up zeros for his next 5 innings, and you're like, hey, well, there was a good sign that we just saw from him. He just happened to give up 4 runs in that first inning. So Kyle Freeland, I think, is the one guy that, and maybe it's because the bar is set so low, that I kind of still have some faith in. But again, if you put Kyle Freeland on the Brewers pitching rotation and the Dodgers pitching rotation, Padres, like, name a good team, he's getting sent down, or he's getting sent into the bullpen, right? So I understand where we're coming from. Again, we're grading this on the Rockies curve, but it kind of brings up my next point, which is where do you go from here, right? Where do you turn towards? Because you can't just say, oh, well, at some point we're going to have really good hitters and the hitters are going to make up for how bad our pitchers are. Like, you have to simultaneously go and try to get good pitching. You have to try to fix your pitching staff. And as of now, aside from Sean Sullivan, Gabriel Hughes, and maybe a couple other pitchers that might be close in the minors to getting their chance in the big leagues within this year or next year, it doesn't seem like the minors are set up in a place where we've got 5 or 6 guys that are ready to go, at least in the starting rotation. So where do you go from here? And yeah, I'll ask that to you, Spencer. I mean, what's the next step for the Rockies? Chase Dollander just got called up. You've got a couple guys in the minors. What does the pitching rotation, what do the moves look like to get you to a place where you can be successful again?
Well, I think it's a lot of hope. And that's what we deal with as the Rockies fans a lot, is just the big HOPE. I do think there are some guys, like you mentioned, the Gabriel Hughes, the Brody Brecks have been pitching really well down in the minor leagues. You have to hope that some of these guys are ready in the next few years and can come up and kind of reinvigorate this staff. But right now it's a lot of, not that we can't guarantee that any of these moves are going to be correct in 3 to 4 years, but trading Ryan McMahon for 2 pitching prospects is exactly what this team needs to do. You need to get as many arms as you can, bring them up through the system, and see which one sticks. And drafting 11 pitchers at, pitcher after pitcher for 11 straight picks at the end of the draft is also something you need to do. I think they're on the right track. Whether or not it's going to work out, sports you just can never be sure of. But you have to add as many arms as you can, and you have to just hope that if you have 11 draft picks, maybe 2 or 3 of them make AAA, and then 1 or 2 of them make the major league roster and become one of your starters. Because going into this year, we didn't. We said it a million times, we didn't expect the Rockies to be this bad. But if you look at on the surface, Freeland, Senzatella, Marquez, Gomber, and then and like Ryan Feltner, I think that was the starting 5 opening day, and they pitched decent to start the year. But then you've had injuries, Feltner and Senzatella. Well, Senzatella's not an injury. That was we're going to make up an injury for you because
we're going to get him out of the rotation real quick.
Yeah. And then Gomber came back a little bit later, and they're all fine. But just like the entire Rockies roster, a lot of the fine players aren't going to make a good team. These fine players will make good role players on a really good team. Or see Ryan McMahon, see any of these pitchers would be like when you look at Kyle Freeland compared to other starting 5 rotations, you're like, okay, he's our grinded out 5th guy. Like back in the day when the Rockies made the playoffs, made the World Series, they had a guy named Josh Fogg, and he started the play-in game against the Padres. And he was not any good. He was like a 4 or 5 ERA pitcher, but he will go out there and grind it out for you. And that's what the Rockies have. The Rockies have a full rotation of current 4th or 5th starters in major leagues, other than the potential and ceiling of Chase Dollander.
Yeah. There's so many layers to this, because, you also have to talk about, what's going to bring a player over to Colorado. And I see Scott in the chat, saying, if you can clear Chris Bryant's contract, then you have more money, more flexibility to be able to throw money at players in free agencies, because we all know it costs more money to get a pitcher to come play in Colorado. I've said this before, and I got to say this before we go to our first break, but I've said this before and I'll say it again. Good pitchers will perform well and will succeed at Coors Field and at elevation and for the Colorado Rockies if you have a good pitcher, if they have good talent, right? Like, yes, Paul Skeens gave up that home run to Jordan Beck. The Rockies were able to overcome Paul Skeens. But aside from that one bad at-bat, Paul Skeens was dominating against the Colorado Rockies, right? That we've seen good pitching performances at Coors Field time and time again. A good pitcher will pitch well if they are playing for the Colorado Rockies. And if you go even further than that, if you can build a good team, the foundation of a good team, pitchers are going to want to come play for Colorado. I mean, I understand that there's all these bad stigmas, there's all this bad, stereotypes about what it means to play at elevation. But if the Colorado Rockies are a good baseball team, it's easier to attract good players to play for you. So yes, pitching is a big deal, and we've got to figure that out. And you can say you're a draft and development team all you want. But at the end of the day, you've got to get your organization to a place where you're not the laughingstock of Major League Baseball, and then you can start making some more aggressive moves. But until that happens, I just see this being a really challenging, slippery slope of an uphill battle that the Rockies are constantly going to be on. So hopefully, some draft and development, processes work out and surprise us. But until then, I think the Rockies have a lot of work to do. We got to take our first break of the show. After the break, though, I do want to predict what the 2026 pitching rotation for the Colorado Rockies looks like. Are there going to be moves in the offseason? Do we see any moving on from certain pitchers? What does the pitching rotation look like in 2026? We'll hit on that after this first break. Well, I want to give a quick shout out to our friends over at Game Time, because Game Time makes it easier and more affordable to get the tickets that you want to the events that you want. And it's not just sports. I mean, they do other events as well. You can go to the theater, you can get tickets to, concerts with Game Time. I mean, there's so many awesome things that Game Time does. But of course, we on the DNVR Rockies podcast, we love using Game Time to go to Rockies games and go to any other sporting event that you want to go to. And they've got an incredible app that really just allows you to take care of all of the variables that comes with buying tickets, because we know it can be kind of complicated when you go to buy tickets. There's all these hidden fees. There's all these, it's hard to find the seat that you want. With Game Time, it takes care of all of that for you so that you see the exact price that you are going to get for the tickets that you want. You can see exactly what the view from those seats that you're going to get are. I mean, it's incredible. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code DNVR for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code DNVR for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Also want to give some love to our friends over at Toyota. Toyota is the official vehicle of DNVR and of the Colorado Rockies. I got to say, the Savannah Bananas were in town. We'll talk about that later in the show. I was hoping to see Charlie Blackmon make his return to Coors Field, maybe even drive his gifted Toyota Tundra. I believe it was the Tundra that he was gifted at the end of the 2024 season last year. Because, I mean, you think about the Rockies. If you think about a car that goes with the Rockies, it's Toyota. You see Toyotas around Coors Field, and I got to say, it just goes hand in hand with baseball. I actually went up in the mountains this last weekend with my wife. I was saying that earlier for our anniversary. We went camping, did a little fishing. I took my old 2007 Toyota Highlander that's getting up there in miles, and it's still a beast. I mean, all-wheel drive. It's got great, it's got great fuel efficiency. I mean, you just can't go wrong. Whether you're getting a car that can handle the mountains, the snow, or just a daily driver that you want to drive around Denver, so many choices, so many options with Toyota. So visit your Front Range Toyota stores at a location near you. That's Auto Nation Toyota, Arapahoe and Centennial, Corwin Toyota in Boulder, Groove Toyota in Littleton, Mountain States Toyota in Denver, and Stevenson's Toyota East in Aurora, Stevenson's Toyota West in Lakewood. Toyota is the official vehicle of DNVR. All right, we're going to be getting to some fan questions here on the show in just a moment. Got to continue, though, with our conversation about the Rockies pitching. And I did see somewhere, it was at the beginning of the comments in the chat, someone was asking, I think it was Luke in the chat, was asking about, what do you do with Antonio Senzatella? How much would he cost? Yeah, there it is. Luke Warlick. If we release Senzatella outright, how much money is guaranteed to him? So just to kind of quick give you an overview of Senzatella's 5-year contract that he signed back in 2022. It's a $50.5 million contract, including all 50.5 guaranteed. He has an annual salary of around $10 million. But in 2025, Senzatella's salary increases to $12 million, and that goes through 2027. So you're on the hook for him in 2026 and 2027 at around $12 million each. So you're looking at just shy of $30 million if you were to, if you were to release Antonio Senzatella. So if you're wondering why Senzatella has not been DFA'd yet, that $30 million paycheck is a pretty good reason why the Rockies have not moved on from Senzatella. Because also, if you remember correctly, the Rockies started last year. They were going through a bit of a pay cut, across the organization. So the Rockies are not in a good place financially. So you can't just sit there and say, with a team like the Yankees, you can't just say, you know what, we'll eat 30 grand. You kind of have to figure out a way to work around that. Now, I had talked to Warren Schaefer about, hey, Senzatella, I mean, there's no way to sugarcoat this. He's struggling as a starting pitcher. What do you do with that? And he told us pretty much straightforward, we're going to be having some conversations about that over the next couple of days. This was last week, about what our game plan needs to be with Senzatella moving forward. He did also say they have not counted out moving Senzatella to the bullpen. I think that's probably going to be their next move. Senza's obviously in a injury protocol right now because of the blister that he had supposedly on his middle finger. Yeah, that one, Spencer, that finger. So I think there's a good chance we see Senzatella maybe get one more start, and if that start doesn't look good, which no one's really expecting it to, he probably gets moved to the bullpen. This brings up the question, though. What does the rotation look like in 2026? Because, Marquez has a contract that's expiring. He becomes a free agent. Gomber has a contract that's expiring. He becomes a free agent. Kyle Freeland has a couple more years, I believe, if I remember that correctly. Senza has a couple more years. What does our starting rotation look like in 2026 if you are Mr. GM of the Colorado Rockies, Spencer?
Well, I can't give you fully specific names because I'm just being hopeful that a few of the darts work out. But my rotation in 2026 does have Kyle Freeland in it. Senzatella, I believe, is a perfect long inning relief guy. because right now, just like any other Rockies pitcher that either rolls out of the bullpen or comes in to start a game, Ryan Rollison is in way over his head. Every time he comes in, he's given up multiple runs. Him or Carson Palmquist, whoever they bring out when they're already down like 7-0 in the third inning, it immediately vaults up to 12-0. And that's like pretty consistent over the past 2 weeks. So I think Senzatella is a perfect guy that you can bring in the fourth or fifth inning when you're down a bunch of runs, and he may be able to finish the game for you. It's not going to be pretty, but not a lot of anything we've seen this season has been pretty. So you kind of just hope that he eats some innings for you, and you don't have Austin Nola pitching in the ninth in a getaway game at your home ballpark on a Wednesday and allowing 9+ runs. So I really think that if I were the Rockies GM, I'd keep Freeland in the rotation. I would see what Marquez is about. But then the other 3 spots, I would look to get some good development from a Dolander, from a Hughes, from one of these guys. Hope that they're ready out of camp. Hope that Feltner's ready out of camp. And then I would go get one more veteran in the exact same, like, what's the word I'm looking for? Like, fill-in of Cal Quantrill and what he was last year. I mean, I just looked at his numbers. He was 8-11 last year with an under 5 ERA. And yes, it's sad to be excited about that, but we are talking about the Colorado Rockies here. A good vet. He was 29 at the time when they signed him. But that's the kind of guy that you need to kind of fill out your rotation, because I don't think they can go full young, but I do think there's 2 spots that the Rockies need to find from their farm system. There's 2 spots, whether they keep Freeland and Marquez or Freeland and Gomber, whoever they end up keeping. I think 2 of the guys that are on the current 7-man rotation, if you will. Maybe it's Tanner Gordon. Maybe it's Bradley Blaylock. Anybody's looked horrible these past few weeks, so it's really hard to project them just being better next year. But if you're looking on the bright side of things, I would keep 2 to 3 of those guys. Find one veteran, a decent veteran, like a Cal Quantrill, who can come in and maybe give you an under 5 ERA for the whole season, maybe talk some shit to a random catcher for the Red Sox, and then hope that one of your rookies or your guys in the farm system is ready by spring training of next year to be your 4th or 5th starter that we can get excited about every 5 days. Because even though Chase Dolander's start of his career has not been what we had all hoped, when you see what a Paul Skeens does, he's still exciting to watch. Like, I'm still excited to watch him pitch tonight, because maybe it's the game that he turns it around and all of a sudden becomes someone good. So I really do think they should go out and get another vet, but I'm kind of tired of seeing the same guys. I think you save 2 rotation spots for these same 5, 7, 8, 9 guys, and then you let your farm system hopefully grow up into a year where they can even take some bullpen spots next year.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. The Rockies, young arms, they're guys in the minor league system currently are not ready, unfortunately. And, yes, Sean Sullivan has looked really good throughout his time so far in the minors this year. Gabriel Hughes is knocking on the door. But if you read, I think Thomas Harding had a good newsletter where he was talking about it, and he was saying that, Gabriel Hughes, although his numbers are looking really good, he's being monitored because he's just coming back from Tommy John surgery this season. So the organization isn't fully ready for him to take a big league starting load just yet. And that's the same thing with Sean Sullivan. Sean Sullivan has great numbers in Double-A, but he just had right hip surgery last season, and so he's being monitored to make sure his workload is at the level that it needs to be at. And so I think the same thing is going to happen for them next year. I think they'll be closer to being ready next year, and I think we might probably see them debut next year. We might see them take the innings of Tanner Gordon or Bradley Blaylock next season, but I don't think they're going to be ready this year. And so you probably do have to look at, maybe getting a couple veterans, maybe 1 or 2 veterans to fill that spot. When you said, yeah, we got to get a veteran to take over, a pitching rotation spot, my initial thought, because I just saw him go out and say that he wants to pitch in 2026. Does this mean that we're going to see Justin Verlander pitching in a Rockies uniform in 2026 as a 40-whatever-year-old man that he is? He's still throwing 98 miles an hour, so you never know.
I'll take it.
Yeah, that would sell some tickets, right? I mean, I would want to go watch Justin Verlander pitch as a Colorado Rocky. He'd be a fun veteran to see for 5 seconds until he gives up 10 runs in the first inning and we all hate him for it. I'd take it.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, if you look at some of the guys that are available going into next year, you've got your Jordan Montgomerys, your Walker Buehlers, Chris Sale, Valdez from the Houston Astros, Miles Mikolas, Jack Flaherty, Max Scherzer is going to be a free agent, Charlie Morton, John Gray, Dylan Cease. So there's some guys out there that I wouldn't be surprised. You may not get the top tier guys, and all of these guys are making in the 15 to 20 million now, but you go down to the 10 range and you've got Herman Marquez, shocker right there, but Steven Matz, Tyler Mahle, Patrick Corbin, guys like that. Like, I think they do need to bring in one other guy and go out and spend that 10 million, 12 million and get a guy that is not your ace. The Rockies, I don't think will have, unless Chase Dollander turns it around, a bona fide ace for the next 2 to 3 years. But if you even look back to, when we did our quarter century team and the teams that made the playoffs, yes, Marquez, like in 17-18 was the ace, but everybody was just above average. And you don't need, it'd be great to have a Paul Skeens. It'd be great to have a fucking Tariq Skubal, but that's not going to happen for the Rockies. So if you get 4 or 5 really good pitchers and they can stay healthy for a year, that's what'll get this team back to contending for a playoff spot, believing they can win games, and then you take the next step from there. We're not worried about winning the World Series yet. Could be 5, could be 10, could be 20 years down the road. But in the moment right now, they need to take steps to just winning games and winning some and playing some meaningful baseball past April or May of a single year. I think that's a big step for the team next year.
Yeah, just take a step forward, right? Take a step in the right direction. We were hoping this was the year where, we were like, okay, this team looks kind of like the not to be named Oakland Athletics, right? They're kind of in the middle. They're not going to make it to the playoffs, but they're like having good stretches. Like, that's what you need to see from the team next year. You got to take a step forward. Pitching is a big part of that, but I also agree. I don't think you should be spending an insane amount of money on pitching at this point either. Like I said earlier, you get the foundation of being a good team, of basically just not being the laughing stock of Major League Baseball. You get that foundation laid. You get your hitters back to your offense back to a place where you're not setting negative records. You're in almost every single game. You're just playing good baseball. Then you can start going out and spending money on good pitchers so that you can kind of get the full package. But the Rockies are a long way away from doing that. So pitching is in a tough spot. Pitching is in a very tough spot. It's going to be a topic of concern for a while, unfortunately. We do got to take our second break of the show. After the break, though, we had a great question from our friend Mr. Purple in the DNVR Discord, the diehard Discord, asking, under what circumstances do the Rockies keep Warren Schaefer? And there are some layers to that. I've had some conversations with people in the organization about some of the circumstances that might happen or might not happen. So I want to kind of unpack that a little bit, as well as give some early reactions to Kyle Karros warming Bernabel and some of the young guys that are starting to heat up. So we'll talk about that all coming up next on the DNVR Rockies podcast. Want to give some love to our friends right now over at Empire Today. Empire Today, if you are getting your floors replaced, or maybe you need to get your floors replaced and you've been kicking that ball down the field for months, for years maybe, well, you got to go over to our friends at Empire Today and take care of that, because summer is the best time to get your floors replaced, because it's the time of summer projects. And Empire, they do incredible work. They have incredible customer service. Their quality of their floors is great. I mean, I know it's floors and we sometimes, like to overlook floors, but there is nothing better than having a brand new floor. We had our floors redone, a while back, and I got to say, I didn't think too much about floors before we had our floors redone, but walking into our house after we had our floors redone, seeing how smooth everything was, just the quality of the materials that were used, it'll surprise you. It'll surprise you. And Empire Today does incredible work. They are truly the best in the business. So schedule a free in-home estimate today, because some things are just better at home. DNVR listeners can receive a $350 discount when you use promo code DNVR. That is a $350 discount with code DNVR. Restrictions apply. Visit empiretoday.com/DNVR for full details. Also, got to give a shout out to our friends over at Cake Mortgage, because if you are trying to buy a home and you are going to get, or you're going out to try to get approved for a mortgage loan, a home loan mortgage, it can be challenging, and the banks are very complicated when it comes to that. And basically what the banks look for is they look for reliable, traditional income. And we all know nowadays that doesn't exist for a lot of people, myself included. If you're a contractor, if you're a freelancer like I am, someone who gets paid in a lot of different ways that go up in some seasons and go down in other seasons, and it's not your traditional 9 to 5, banks look at that and they say, yeah, no, we don't trust that. We're not giving you money to go buy a home. And it can be really hard to get approved to get a home loan and get a mortgage and all of those kind of things. Well, Cake Mortgage, they really make sure that you can get approved no matter what different types of non-traditional income levels that you have. So like I said, someone like me who's a freelance broadcaster has a lot of different types of income. Cake Mortgage goes out and they look through all of your different bank statements, all of your different income categories, and they allow you to get approved for a home loan so that you can go buy a home, or you can even get approved to go invest in real estate. So many different options when it comes to buying a home. So if you've always dreamed about owning income property, or if you're building your real estate legacy, call 1-800-EAT-CAKE or head to the link in the description of this show, because life is better with Cake. With Cake, again, head to the link in the description to get started. That's Cake Mortgage Corporation, equal housing lender, NMLS number 1734623, licensed in Colorado by the Division of Real Estate. Terms and conditions apply. All right. Got to get to a question from our friend, Mr. Purple, who asked this in the DNVR Diehard Discord. And just by the way, if you guys are not a part of our DNVR Diehard Discord, if you become a DNVR Diehard, you go sign up, you become a Diehard, you get access to all of our Discord channels, not just Rockies, but you get Broncos, Avs, Nuggets, whatever sport you are interested in. Broncos season is pretty much already here. So be sure to check that out. We are pretty active, both Spence and myself, try to be as active as we can in the Discord. Mr. Purple asks, under what circumstances do the Rockies keep Warren Schaefer? What is he trying to accomplish to keep his job? Is he trying to avoid the loss record, which they are one game away from being on pace for? Is that all it would take for him to come back for round 1.5? Shout out to Mr. Purple for the great question. We've talked about this a little bit on the show, but I wanted to revisit this because I've had more conversations with some people within the organization of the Colorado Rockies, not decision makers, but people who are connected within the organization about, what circumstances Warren Schaefer would be brought back. And what's kind of come out in the layers of all of this is basically dependent on where the Rockies decide to go with their next GM or president of baseball operations. If the Rockies go out and hire a new GM that is outside of the organization, not a GM within the organization, like let's say they went out and hired Clint Hurdle to be the next GM of the Colorado Rockies. That's an in-house hire for the GM. That's a different situation. If they go outside the organization to hire a GM, there's a good possibility that person comes in and brings in someone new, or at least reevaluates Warren Schaefer. There's a better chance that Warren Schaefer does not get re-signed as the manager of the Colorado Rockies in 2026. If the Rockies, keep Bill Schmidt as the GM, which if that's the case, you have tons of different problems that we have to talk about. But even if they keep an in-house hire, like hiring Clint Hurdle or someone else within the organization to be the next GM of the organization, there is a pretty good chance that Warren Schaefer has done enough, whether they hit the win total or not, or the loss total, I should say, or not, that he is the manager in 2026. And I think he's earned the benefit of the doubt in that conversation, at least, because I think the way I look at it is, whether he hits that, or whether the Colorado Rockies break the record, the White Sox record for most losses in MLB history, not all of that is Warren Schaefer's fault. And also, he was, as we've said plenty of times on the show, he was handed the keys to a sinking ship, right? He's doing the best he can with the pieces that he's been allowed. And I think there are some metrics that we've looked at since Warren Schaefer has taken over that shows an improvement. You talk to specific players from a morality standpoint, and they have said that, some of the qualitative aspects of Warren Schaefer have been really good. The players really love playing for him. They appreciate his attitude, his mentality. Even, Bill Schmidt has talked about, really appreciating what Warren Schaefer has been able to do in shifting some of the mindset of some of these players. The excitement level, the intensity level has picked up, but also the record has improved since, at least the pace of the record has improved since Warren Schaefer has taken over. So I don't know if he's being graded specifically on whether or not the Rockies avoid the loss record. I actually don't really think it matters that much at all. I think that's just something that you're trying to avoid just for trying to be on the right side of history standpoint. But I think a lot of this decision depends upon which direction the organization goes for their next GM.
Yeah, and I completely agree. I don't think that as crazy as this is going to sound coming out of my mouth, because sports are about winning and losing, I don't think the wins and losses have anything to do with Warren Schaefer finishing this year and being the manager next year. To me, it's as an organization looking down at the players and down at the roster and the team and the way they were playing it in early April, May, winning like 5 games out of 60 or whatever it was at the time, and turning it around really, relatively speaking, on a Rockies curve since the All-Star break, and even a couple months before that, or a month before that, when they swept the Marlins. They kind of turned it around and won like 7 out of 10 games. They had a good record. And winning and losing is ultimately what matters for a manager. That's what when you retire from managing, your win-loss record is always going to come with you. But I think the way the players have started playing, the camaraderie in the locker room, the clubhouse, the way they've kind of went to the youth movement finally. There's still lineups that set us off, or at least the 9-hitter in most lineups set us off. But a lot of that is due to some injuries too, which are uncontrollable. But overall, I do think the team plays a little bit better brand of baseball. And there's some inconsistencies, and there's some players, mental mistakes, and there's injuries, and there's a ton of factors that go into this. But I personally believe, even if you go to a new GM, and unless they just bring in somebody completely that they trust, which is, at that point, if you're bringing in a new GM, you got to trust him and who he wants below him and who he wants running the team. I personally think Warren Schaefer's done enough to warrant another chance at this job, because players are definitely playing harder. They've had a better record. The pitching the last 2 weeks has been terrible, but since the All-Star break, they've won games, and they've been a near close to 500 team, which is unfathomable for the way this team started the year. And Warren Schaefer, I believe, is really trying. And it sounds sad because of where the Rockies are at, but I think that's really all you need at this point. Like, you're not just going to bring in a Bruce Bochy and then all of a sudden this team's going to go 82 and 80 next year with the same players. It's an organizational failure from the top down, of the players, the manager, the GM, the front office, the AAA players, all the players in the farm system just not being good enough right now. And so I'm not absolving Warren of any blame, but just watching this team and watching every game throughout the year, it's been clear that since Warren Schaefer took over, there's a different vibe in the clubhouse, and there's a different vibe with the players. And while they may not be winning games, I feel like they're playing some good baseball in a relative Rockies related curve.
And there's some belief, I think. Scott says in the chat, I don't think they complete that comeback, that 9-0 first inning comeback if Bud was at the helm. I agree, and that's not a knock on Bud. I just think he plays he manages a traditional style of baseball that Warren Schaefer tends to be a little more aggressive on. I do think there are specific metrics that I've looked at, or not even metrics, but decisions that I've looked at in how he's crafted a lineup, the aggressiveness he's had on, or he's shown on sending up players or even sitting players that have not been performing. I think Bud was really hesitant to do that with a lot of guys in the past, where, I think Michael Toglia would still be here if Bud Black was still managing. I think situations like that, you see some of the differences. But to answer your next question in the chat, Mr. Purple, if they hit the loss record, is he guaranteed to be gone? I don't think so. Again, like Spencer said, I don't think this is a wins and losses situation for Warren Schaefer. I think if the Rockies hit the loss record, I think it's a guarantee, if it's not already, that Bill Schmidt's gone. And I think that isn't really up for debate, or it shouldn't be up for debate. But I think the GM or new GM, or let's just even say ownership, because the Rockies aren't selling the team. So the Montforts, what they're looking for should be the specifics of, what kind of decisions are we seeing Warren Schaefer making in game, out of game, roster. What are the players saying? Those are the types of things that I think are going to come into this. And I think all of those, for the most part, have been relatively positive. Now, I know there are people out there that do not like Warren Schaefer, and I'm not just talking about crazed Rockies fans who, tweet at us every single game saying Warren Schaefer should be fired, because that's insane. But D-Mac, one of our friends over at Altitude, who is obsessed with the Rockies, I would consider him a sicko like us. He has gone out on Altitude in the morning in their show and advocated for him not getting a job, or at least needing to show more before he's being rehired. I know D-Mac has a lot of doubts and a lot of frustrations with some of the ways Warren manages the game, in-game stuff. So I actually we're trying to get DMAC to come on this show. We're just trying to get some schedule stuff figured out to have DMAC come on the show and kind of talk to us about this, because DMAC's one of the few guys that I've seen take a pretty anti-Warren Schaefer approach. And I'm just curious to see the other side of that, because I think, Spence, you and I are pretty pro Schaefer. I feel like we both have a pretty good feel for Schaefer, and we both think Schaefer's a good person for this job. But I'd like to see someone argue against that.
Yeah, and I think really I'm not saying DMAC's in the wrong here. Obviously, there's no wrong and right. This is all opinion based, but I do think there is a lot of people out there, and it's shown in attendance and the way people talk about the Rockies, that no matter what hire they make, if it's an in-house hire, it's an immediate loss in their mind. And I can't blame them for feeling that way because of the way the Rockies have played the last 3 years, the way the ownership hasn't spent certain amounts of money or found the right players to become a good team that Colorado really wants. But I do think that any in-house hire, whether it's GM, whether it's manager, whether it's whatever it is, I think they want all of that cleaned out. And it's nothing against Warren Schaefer as the actual manager that he is. It's just the fact that he was part of the Rockies organization. And, you know, if there's a disease in an area, everybody in that area seems to catch that disease. I'm feeling that right now, actually, in my own personal life, it feels like. And so when you look at it that way, you're like, okay, well, we have to get outside this organization in order to turn anything around in the near or distant future. And Warren Schaefer is going to be part of that guy, or part of those hires that were in-house and nobody's going to be happy about no matter what. Even if the team was a 600 ball club when he took over, and then, or started to win at a 600 winning percentage clip, like, people would still not be happy with the entire season. Maybe they'd give him a little more benefit of the doubt, but the reality is their record with Warren Schaefer as the manager compared to the record with Bud Black this year has been a relative 180 for how bad they played the first 2 months until Bud was fired. So yeah, it's just a product of him being part of the organization and growing up as a Rockies manager, and, in the AAA, and then part of the bench coach for the pro team. Like, nobody's going to love that hire, and it's nothing against Warren Schaefer as an actual manager. It's just the process and the overall organizational structure.
Yeah, and to respond to Austin in the chat, he says, I haven't seen enough difference in the past 4 months. All I see is Kyle Farmer pitching the ninth inning. You're right. I mean, the Rockies are still losing games, and they're still losing games in historic fashion. Warren Schaefer goes on the post game and says, hey, here's the good things that we've done throughout the game, and here's, but it still doesn't matter. We still lost the game 20-1, right? Like, I understand that it's hard to gauge whether or not a guy is the right fit because there hasn't been a complete 180 on wins and losses. The Rockies are still losing a lot of games. They're still going to get close to, if not beat that single season loss record. I think just my takeaway on all this is it just goes to show that the next manager of the Colorado Rockies, at least the next 3 years of managers for the Colorado Rockies, doesn't really matter that much. The front office is what matters, and the product that's put out on the field, so going back to the front office, is really all that matters in my mind. Yes, once you get a good product, you need a good manager who can manage that. But I think the manager of the Rockies the next 3 years is one of the lower priority positions in my eyes in that organization, just because of how many other problems you have to fix. There's so much else that's wrong with the Rockies. To me, Warren Schaefer isn't really the main thing that's wrong with them. And in my eyes, he could be someone that's in a good spot. So we'll have plenty more conversations about Warren Schaefer over the next few months as this offseason ramps up here, in the next couple months, and we transition into the offseason. But got to take our last break of the show. After the break, we hit Circle of Trust and also talk about some of the young guys. Kyle Karros making his debut, and we didn't have a chance to talk about him on the last show. So let's give some early reactions to some of the young players and wrap things up right after this next break. Well, Broncos country, this next partner is for you. I want to give a shout out to our friends over at ENT Credit Union, because ENT Credit Union is the official banking partner of the Denver Broncos, and they have created a Broncos checking account that is built just for Broncos fans like you and me. I am pumped, and I know I'm a baseball guy. I love baseball, but I also love Broncos. I love football. I love college football. I love all of the other sports. But I am stoked for Broncos season to be here. It was so fun to get to watch some preseason football. And with ENT Credit Union, they are built for Broncos fans. They've got an incredible checking account that, like I said, is built for fans like us. It's loaded with all kinds of perks that will get any Broncos fan fired up. Things like no surprise fees, no minimum balance requirements, and the money in your Broncos checking account even earns dividends, which is hard to find nowadays. So it's incredible account. But then you can layer all of the other Broncos fan perks, 10% off food and gear on game days at Empower Field at Mile High, a Broncos branded debit card to rep the team. I'm pretty sure Bo Nix is on the debit card. I mean, if you're a Broncos fan, you have to go partner with our friends at ENT Credit Union. So if you're ready to bank like a Bronco, go to ent.com/DNVR. That's ent.com/DNVR and sign up for Broncos checking today. ENT Credit Union is insured by the NCUA. Membership required. Annual percentage yield. Account requires associated ENT Broncos debit card. Also want to give some love to our friends over at Bet365, because at Bet365, we don't do ordinary, and Bet365 has a lot of cool perks. We were just talking about all the cool perks with Broncos fans on our last partner. Well, with Bet365, they've got some cool perks for baseball fans, because they've got this thing called the MLB Early Payout offer. And if you use that code DNVR365 when you sign up, you can get access to all of those perks. But basically what the MLB Early Payout offer is, if you're betting, let's just say you're betting against the Rockies, because we have this thing called the anti-Rockies parlay. We tend to bet against the Rockies because if the Rockies are going to be bad, you might as well make some money off of it, right? Well, if you bet on the money line for the opponent, so let's just say the St. Louis Cardinals today to beat the Rockies, if the Cardinals go up by 5 runs or more at any point in the game, you get an immediate payout, instant payout, even if the Rockies come back. So let's go back to that Pirates game where the Rockies were down 9-0 in the first inning. They come back and beat the Pirates. Doesn't matter. If you bet on the Pirates to win that game, you got the instant payout because the Pirates went up by 5 runs or more in the first inning. Awesome stuff over at the Bet365 app. Again, use that code DNVR365 when you sign up and see why it's never ordinary at Bet365. Must be 21 or older and physically located in Colorado. Please gamble responsibly. If you or someone you know has a gambling problem and wants help, call or text 1-800-GAMBLER. Kyle Karros.
I would venture to bet that 5-0 payout offer has hit 12 Rockies games in a row. So make sure I don't think that's inaccurate to state, to be honest.
We should look that up, because I would venture to bet that too, man.
I was kind of looking it up, and it's maybe other than their 6-5 loss at Arizona, I think 11 of the last 12 games they've been down 5 runs at one point in the game. So shout out Bet365. Go hit that.
Brutal. I mean, hey, if you're betting against the Rockies, then you're in a good spot. I did see someone tweeted at you, I think this last weekend, Spence. They had said, "Hey, here's a great business idea. Bet against the Rockies." And I wanted to tweet back and be like, "Brother, you're getting on the train a little too late, man. We've been doing this all year long, right? If you're going to make some money, betting against the Rockies has been a good business plan." But Rockies have had some fun parts of their game. Let's just say that. I mean, besides pitching aside, Kyle Karros, Warming Bernabel, Adael Amador, some young guys, getting their opportunities at the big league level, and they're playing well. Let's talk Kyle Karros first, because he was called up after you and I had our last show. We had our last show Wednesday last week, so it's been a minute. What are your thoughts, man? You got to watch Kyle Karros play in a Rockies uniform. That feels good to say, and it happened before September, which we all thought it was going to happen in September. What are your thoughts on Kyle Karros so far?
I actually love it. I love Kyle Karros. I love his Nolan Arenado looking batting stance. He looks very much like him and has a lot of the same mannerisms in the box. So I like that, bringing up some good memories back before this whole turned into a disaster in 2018 or 2020 when he got traded. But I think overall he's shown that he belongs in the major leagues. Let's put it that way. Is he going to be Nolan Arenado? Is he going to be the next great third baseman of the National League? You never know. But I've seen enough to know that he at least belongs at the major league level right now. And that was kind of one of the questions is like, we've had multiple guys tear it up in AAA, and Zach Bean's still doing that. And he hasn't gotten the call up again to the major league level. So it's nice to see a guy come up. He gets a single in his first at bat, drives in a run his first game. He's had a couple hits every single game that he's played. And so, it's nice to see because we've been, clamoring for this in the last 6 to 8 weeks. Ever since he got called up to AAA, started hitting well down there. Every time you see a bomb down in Albuquerque from him, you're like, when is he getting the call up? And he hasn't disappointed. I mean, he hasn't taken the world by storm, but the Rockies have basically the best call up in the MLB this year with Warming Bernabel and what he's done. I mean, he set a record that hasn't happened in 70 plus years. So it's really tough to compete with that. But overall, Karros has looked great. And I think, the visions of a Karros, Tovar, Bernabel, and potentially Ryan Ritter, or even right now, Adael Amador infield is something that if you would have told us at the beginning of the year that was the case, you would have been a little sad because you would have expected this record to be about where it is and maybe even a little bit better. But the overall idea that the guys are starting to play and before September Karros is going to get 60 plus games in the MLB this year and really kind of set the foundation for next year in spring training. And the third base job is wide open right now with the trade of Ryan McMahon. So it feels to me like he's taking that job right now. He's not just like, the next guy up and has to play at third base. He feels like he stepped in and in a 3-game series, very small sample size, has taken the job, and he doesn't strike out a ton, which is good. We need to add more of those guys to the lineup. Bernabel is one of those guys as well. So you're adding a guy with a high contact rate and has got some big hits already in his few games with the Rockies.
Is it crazy for me to say that I feel like Kyle Karros could end up being, offensively, I should say, like a 2025 Mickey Moniak, like a guy with 20 home runs, 20 plus home runs in the season, good OPS, you're right. He's probably not going to end up being like a Nolan Arenado. And our expectation, if he ends up being like that, great. But my expectations are not that high for really anyone. So if he can end up being like a 2025 Mickey Moniak with the Colorado Rockies this year, I'm cool with that. That's a good get. And to your credit, or to your point, he's done everything so far in the 2 games or whatever, 3 games that he's been up. He's done enough for me to feel like, he deserves to be at this level and figure it out here, right? He's not like Tolio where, he's had such a down streak where you have to send him back down. He's playing great. He's playing well. And he reminds me kind of Ryan Ritter, where he's not putting up the numbers that Bernabel, has put up, which, like you said, no one is putting up those kind of numbers in their major league debut, but he's doing enough where you feel confident leaving him at the big league level and saying, hey, figure it out here. Hopefully, you just allow this to be the foundation that you can grow on so that in 2026 you get better. In 2027, you get even better. And by 2028, Ethan Holiday, Charlie Condon, Bernabel, all these guys are just popping off and you're hopefully a better team by then, So I think he's in a good spot. I think he's playing well. I'm excited to see how he progresses. I do like the idea of having an infield that consists of Karros, Tovar, Ritter, and/or Amador, and then Bernabel. That feels pretty good to see out there, especially because the Rockies have a pretty good outfield as well, at least on paper. So I'm feeling pretty good about where, at least from an offensive and defensive standpoint, where things are at. Rockies got to figure out their base running. That's a problem for them right now. But we got to change gears here real quick before we wrap up the show. Circle of Trust. It's changing day to day, as it has all year long. Who occupies the 2025, what's today? August 11th Circle of Trust?
Well, one guy that I have to add to this, and I can't remember if I put him in there or put him near it last time, is definitely Brenton Doyle. We're seeing a turnaround from Brenton Doyle these past few months. He's hitting the cover off the ball, hitting doubles. He's still getting, and there was multiple balls yesterday where off the Diamondbacks bat, I was like, oh, that's a double. And then he doesn't even dive for it. He's just hovering over and makes the catch because of his speed. He's hitting the ball for power. He hit a home run over the center field wall yesterday.
Yeah, it was crushed.
Absolutely crushed if you hit one out to center field at Chase Field or whatever that place is called nowadays. These stadiums are all changing names. I'm just going to call them the old field. I think it is still Chase.
I think it's
Field.
Chase.
So
Yeah.
Brenton Doyle definitely in the circle of trust. Warming Bernabel still there. Jordan Beck is still there. He's had a rough few games. Mickey Moniak, I think, is working his way back out. But when you look at his numbers, every time he's up at bat during these last few games, they bring up the OPS and the slugging over the past month, or they cherry pick a date for the graphic to where he's up there, but he's in the top 5 in major leagues in hitting. So there's a lot of guys that are, kind of dancing around the circle of trust. They're all around the circle of it, the outer ring of it, kind of doing a dance, and then all the pitchers are on a different planet, just doing their own thing in their own circle of, I don't know what the opposite of a circle of trust would be. The circle of
death.
Death, yeah.
Circle of doom.
The red ring of death, like we used to get on the Xbox.
Yeah, it's not good.
Yeah,
it's not good. I would put the Rockies first inning, Rockies starting pitchers first inning in the circle of trust, just given the fact that you trust that they are going to give up a run at minimum every single time they step out there. It's not a good trust, but it's trust nonetheless. Yeah, I think you're pretty much dead on. I did see. I think Scott was saying Freeman's kind of on the fringe of the circle of trust, edge circle of trust. Freeman, Dugan, Darnell. Freeman has done enough for me this year that I feel confident with him still in the circle of trust. He just, hasn't been getting on base at the clip that he was at the beginning of the year, but he's still in the circle of trust to me. The Rockies, I think, we're in a position, which is so funny given how bad these games have been. We're in a position where the Rockies might have the most people in the circle of trust that we've seen all season long.
Yeah, and it just comes from, the offensive outbreak that they've essentially had since they were in the Pirates series, and then even had a decent offensive series against the Diamondbacks.
Yeah.
The Blue Jays was not as good, but we're actually seeing some hitting. We're seeing some hitting from these guys consistently. Yesterday, the bottom of the lineup was incredible. It didn't result in a lot of runs. And I think I argued somebody on Twitter about this, but the Rockies get a ton of worthless hits. Yesterday, you can just point to yesterday's game, look at the box score, and don't look at how many runs they scored and think, holy shit, the Rockies scored 14 runs. And they're not. Like, they're out hitting teams consistently, and the other teams are hitting bombs, and they're doing the things to drive in runs with 2 outs. And the Rockies are not doing those. The Rockies are striking out, getting 2 outs, hitting a single, hitting another single. You got first and third, 2 outs, and then you're getting the third out on the next batter. Like, it's pretty much like clockwork watching them. Or they even get first and second, nobody out, and then find a way to not drive in any of those runs. So Rockies with runners in scoring position out of the circle of trust. Rockies hitting the baseball with the bases empty, definitely in the circle of trust.
Yeah, no, I agree. And just real quick, just for those watching at home, we are in overtime. So if you are watching on television, head over to thednvr.com to continue the conversation. We're wrapping up here in just a second. I just got to address Lefty in the chat says, come on, no Warming Bernabel in the circle of trust. We had kind of put him on the fringe, I think, last week's show, but I agree with Mr. Purple. He's just not, he hasn't done enough to earn it yet. He's doing the right stuff. He's on the right track. He is a honorable mention, future circle of trust nomination, but we're not there yet. Give me towards the end of the year, if he's still doing what he's doing now. I mean, he's still hitting 333. I mean, Warming's doing a good job, but there's a part of me that is worried that a bit of a fall off is in the near future. I'm hoping I'm wrong. But so we'll see if Warming can finish the season at the level that he's at, dead center of the circle of trust. So I'm excited to see him continue. We got to wrap things up on the show, though. Active Toyota chat today, guys. Appreciate you hanging out with us. It's just the sickos in the chat now. We know you guys are the fans that are hanging in there through all of this. We appreciate you a ton because it makes our job more fun because this has been a long season and we're getting through this together. It's the dog days of summer. Spencer's sick. He's literally at home sick because of how hard it's been to watch the Colorado Rockies over these last few days. So we appreciate you guys hanging out with us. Spencer, feel better, man. Hope the Rockies can give you a win tonight so that you can, at least feel a little numb to the pain that you're feeling on the inside.
Yeah, exactly. I'm hoping to feel better for Friday Rooftop Club. We've got that this Friday against the Diamondbacks. So come out. We're going to go to Tom's Watch Bar before. If you come hang out with us, you get a free drink ticket. So you're getting a free drink to have to sit and talk to us, unfortunately, or fortunately for you. You never know what kind of mood we're in, but we're going to hang out at Tom's before the game and then go sit on the rooftop and watch the Rockies hopefully score a ton of runs, maybe not win the game, but a lot of runs crossing the plate is at least a fun watch on a rooftop at Friday night at Coors Field, downtown Denver. So come hang out.
Yeah, good call. Friday Rooftop Club this Friday. I had almost slipped my mind. This Friday, we're going to be all posting up at the rooftop, hanging out with all the good people up there. It is a great time, and also the last time we did Friday Rooftop Club, probably the greatest game in the history of the Colorado Rockies. So
yeah, we definitely can't up it, but we can get close.
I don't think we can ever beat that. But the vibes, and I gotta say, as someone who like showed up in the first inning, the vibes were at an all-time low at the first inning. But man, they picked back up as that game went on. So
for those of us that stayed around.
Yeah, and you know this will be the debut of the rally mullet. So you and I can be rocking the rally mullets together, Spencer. It's going to be a good time. We'll have some fun. So come hang out with us on Friday. Shout out to Dion for pressing the buttons, making us look good. Thank you guys for hanging out with us in the chat. We'll see you guys on Friday. This has been the DNVR Rockies podcast presented by Bet365.
We all silly like the mayor.